Hey there. So before beginning, this is not about Dan Harmon's baby doll video. There is an article from Bounding into Comics that I think is very interesting because it talks about Dan Harmon, and it talks about him essentially trying to move on an employee, and when he doesn't get his way, he basically makes their lives hell. It's interesting because he admits to this. You had the employee come out, talk about that, and he admits to being this way. Now, when he is talking about this on a stage, saying that he's going to recount this tale, he talks about that as being a great ally, because people can go out and people can change. Now, it's amazing when you go through this because this narrative is put forth by somebody that says that they pretty much are a better person after this experience. This is the same person that went out and railed on people because they complained about season 3 of Rick and Morty and about his push to have females out there writing it because that would somehow make things better. He talked about how people had gone out and they were the abusers of women. And yet, here's this guy with a story that is very much not only abuse, but liability. I hope this guy got sued for this stuff because it's insane. So here's Megan Gantz that's talking about this. I wish my memories were foggier. I wish there was a way to fix it. It took me years to believe in my talent again, to trust a boss who, when he complimented me and not cringe when he asked for my number. I was afraid to be enthusiastic, knowing it might turn against me later. I haven't listened to your podcast, but I think walls are the answer, unless you put them up with male coworkers too. Otherwise, you're falling into the Mike Pence school of gender relations that says men can't be trusted with women's phone numbers. With this stuff, right off the bat there, when you're talking about this men and women gender relation within the workplace, the fine line to that these days, I personally don't cross that. I do not call female coworkers after hours. I don't have meetings with them behind closed doors. Basically everything right there out in the front, because these days it just does not fly. And people like we're going to talk about here, like Dan Harmon, they set the stage for that. But continuing, but if I can offer this, it's good to recognize power dynamic, but it's also good to recognize you're no different from those you employ. You're not a king on the hilltop, nor a beast in the labyrinth. Isolation isn't always best. Connection breeds empathy. Empathy allows growth. Within that, connection is a good thing, but within this too, you actually have to separate yourself to some degree as a boss anyhow. And then looking at Dan Harmon, well, look at this story here. Now, Harmon addressed accusations on his podcast, Harmontown, which actually does have a video within this. I would encourage you to go watch that and to listen to the entirety because this is going to summarize a portion of it. But when you listen to him, it's not capturing the part about him being an ally and him putting it out there like this is growth. So listen to this story. I broke up with my girlfriend. Then I went right full steam into creeping on my employee. And then after that season, I got overt about my feelings after it was wrapped and said, I love you. And she said the same thing she'd been saying the entire time in one language or another. Please don't you understand that focusing on me like this, liking me like this, preferring me like this, I can't say no to it. And when you do it, it makes me unable to know whether I'm good at my job. And because I finally got to the point where I said to her, oh, I love you. Because that's what I thought it was when you target someone for 2 years. 2 years of this. I mean, can you really imagine what we're talking about? 2 years of going out, but continuing, and it was therefore rejected that way. I was humiliated. Now, I wanted to teach her a lesson. I wanted to show her that if she didn't like being liked in that way, then oh boy, she should get over herself. After all, if you're just going to be a writer, this is how just writers get treated. I drank, I took pills, I crushed on her, and resented her for not reciprocating it. You like the excuse within this. I drank, I took pills, I'm not responsible for my action. Now I'm clean. Now I'm a good ally. That's why I'm telling you this story, because as I go down this road, I'm allowed to pass judgment on other people. Dan Harmon does that. Dan Harmon has done that many times. Dan Harmon now does not have a Twitter account because of something unrelated that came up with this, wherein he did a skit that went beyond tactful and is actually addressed in this too, if you want to check this out. But Dan Harmon has gone out and placed value judgments on people, calling them man babies and on, and yet this is the thing in his closet. But continuing, and the entire time, I was the one writing her paychecks and in control of whether she stayed or went or whether she felt good about herself or not, and said horrible things, just treated her cruelly, pointedly. Now this, we always talk about the violation of that supervision of a power dynamic, as was mentioned. That was one of the things that was brought up within any type of workplace, period, but was actually brought up with, say, a Bill Clinton and a Monica Lewinsky. When you have someone that is over you in a job position, having a relationship with them is inappropriate. That is a terribly inappropriate thing when you go into something because, of course, within that there is liability. But also, again, say, it goes wrong, something goes wrong like this, you look at the way that this is laid out. But this person, they turned him away. They said, hey, I don't want to be involved in you. And you see exactly how they went about this. They went about that instead of walking away from it, instead of being that great ally, they drank. They took pills and they abused someone for it. But continuing here, things that I would never ever have done if she had been male and if I had never had those feelings for her. And I lied to myself the entire time about it. And I lost my job. I ruined my show. I betrayed the audience. I destroyed everything. And I damaged her internal compass. And I moved on. And I never did it before and will never do it again. But I certainly wouldn't have been able to do it if I had any respect for women on a fundamental level. So when you look at this statement here, talking about respect on a fundamental level, him going in and him talking about, well, I would never do this before, never do it again here. I would have never done it anyhow if I respected women. Then why do people get to pass value judgments on people out there, including women? This guy has passed plenty of value judgments on people, including women, because, of course, everyone gets leaked into toxic fandom or whatnot when they say anything these people don't like. But then you see them behind the scenes here. But continuing here, I was thinking about them as different creatures. I was thinking about the ones that I liked as having some special role in my life, and I did it all by not thinking about it. Now again, this guy puts people on a pedestal. He goes in, he's one of those people that's going to go out and tell you that these employees there, they're different. They're not simply employees. That's one of the things we still have a problem with. When we talk about equality, when we talk about representation and diversity, we still have a lot of people that go out and they acknowledge that they want equality within the workplace, but they don't really want that. They don't really want to treat everyone equal, because if they did, well then, we wouldn't have the upholding of certain types of labels, as a marginalized caste, for example. We wouldn't have those things, period. We would simply have the relationship of people within workplaces. But again, the Dan Harmons out there, they damage that for you. So you have actually the employee here talking about this, and it's kind of strange in a way to see the reaction, because she talks about forgiveness. Now for myself, there would be no forgiveness for this stuff. If someone goes in, they try to railroad my life, they try to make things hard for me, yeah, that wouldn't work. But she said, here's a weird word for you. Last week I called out my former boss, Dan Harmon, for sexual harassment, and today I'm going to ask you to listen to his podcast. I'm not being flippant. I didn't bring up the mess just to sweep it back under the rug, but I find myself in an odd position of having requested an apology publicly and then having received one, a good one, also publicly. I waited 6 years for it, but you can find it this fall far in. Please listen to it. It's only 7 minutes long, but it's a masterclass in how to apologize. He's not rationalizing or justifying or making excuses. You don't think he made excuses within that? You don't think the drinking and the pills and all of that, you don't think that that's excuses there? But continuing, he doesn't just vaguely acknowledge some general wrongdoing in the past. He gives a full account. Yes, I only listened because I expected an apology, but what I didn't expect was the relief I'd feel just hearing him saying these things actually happened. I didn't dream it. I'm not crazy. Ironic that the only person who could give me that comfort is the one person I'd never ask. This was never about vengeance. It's about vindication. That's why it didn't feel right to just accept his apology in private, although I did that too. Because if any part of the process should be done in the light, it's the forgiving part. And so, Dan Harmon, I forgive you. You're probably a better person with that statement, at least, than I would be within it. I would forgive him after I sued him into oblivion for going out and publicly acknowledging that he made my life hell within something. But I think it says something about Dan Harmon. I think it adds to some of the discussion that we've been having within this. When you see that, when you see the fact that this public apology, it's based on real sexism. I mean, when you get down to it, guy goes in, doesn't see people as equal, sees a person as some kind of a byproduct of his affection, decides he's going to move on them. When it doesn't work, he decides he's going to destroy their life. He is also in a position of prominence wherein he can do that. So when you look at this, yeah, it's kind of not only a questionable thing, because it's beyond that. It's morally reprehensible, and it's also very illegal. I'm sure that he could be held accountable not only for an apology, but also as a financial issue. I'm sure that he could be held responsible there as well. It really works into other things too. When I think about how the 2009 pilot that he talks about, the baby doll thing comes up, I can see how Dan Harmon wouldn't get tact at all, because tact, well, that's something that he doesn't seem to possess here. Now, within that, I think that's a lot of problem that a lot of these people have. They don't get how to interact with other people, and it may be beyond that too. I think that is for an investigation to decide. If that goes forward, which I think a lot of these people kind of need to, if you go and you look at his comedy bit within this stuff, I think it's really telling when he goes with the baby doll violation. That's the nicest way I can put it. And we get complete with baby sounds and whatnot, his butt in the air and simulated stuff. I think that says probably more about a person than it really ought to. And it's a terrible topic. But I don't want to conflate one thing to the other within this. I just think it all speaks to Dan Harmon. But anyhow, tell me what you think about that story within this. Do you think that details something about a Dan Harmon within it? I mean, when he's admitting to pretty much harassing an employee over and over again, don't you think that should be something that people go out and they say, yeah, that is not acceptable there? The other thing that people are defending as jokes when they're arguing back and forth. Okay, you want to argue that, but what about this? How is this defensible? Can he come out, publicly apologize, and pretend it never happened when he was put in a position of prominence and abuse that? How exactly does that just go away? But anyhow, I'm curious what people think about this. And I have to say to definitely go and check out Bounding into Comics. If you haven't, it's one of the few places I actually like going and checking out stories, because I don't feel that they come with all the pomp and the pageantry. I don't feel like they're going out and politically trying to motivate me to look at things a certain way. I think that they cover a lot of things that are simply topics right now, and they bring you stories like this, which other places have been spinning as a war on Dan Harmon. Within his own words, when you look at that, he says a whole lot more. But anyhow, like I said, tell me what you think about this stuff. Thank you.